It's the end of the academic year, so whether you're progressing in your current job or getting ready to start a new one, keep listening for tips on how to master the transition. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Brittne Helford.
And I'm Dr. Lisha Taylor.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time. Hey, Lisha, one of the most important financial tasks we do as doctors is protect ourselves, which means getting the right insurance. I recall purchasing my insurance policy just a few days before I graduated from residency. What was your experience?
So I got my insurance when I graduated from medical school right before I started residency. I actually called a few agents, but I had the best service from Pradeep Auto at PKA Insurance Group. He was super responsive and personable. Unlike some of the other agents, Pradeep actually got me quotes from all the major companies and actually took the time to explain the nuances in each of their policies. What I loved most is that he wasn't just this way for me. Whenever I would send one of my friends to him, he would not only speak to them, but he'd also let them know where to go or who to contact if there were better options or discounts available.
At PKA Insurance Group, Pradeep Auto and Matthew Peterson are independent brokers focusing on disability and life insurance. They excel in securing coverage for physicians, including those on visas like J1, H1B, etc. If you're very healthy with limited or no medical issues, approval is likely 5 minutes. I mean, who wouldn't love that? And even if you aren't as healthy as you once were, you can trust that Pradeep and his team at PKA Insurance Group are ready and willing to help you. Reach out to PKA Insurance to discuss your disability or life insurance needs by calling 1-800-258-1018 or emailing info@pkainsurance.com. Hey, money best friend, we want to buy you a drink.
On this show, we are all about spilling the tea on our finances and our personal lives, but we also want to share a little bit more tea with you. Basically, we're trying to give you a free drink on us.
All you have to do in order to put your name in this drawing for a free drink is to leave a review.
Hopefully, you'll give us 5 stars and share this podcast with others that you know. Whenever you rate and review the podcast, it just makes it easier for other people who maybe haven't heard of us before to find us.
Rate and review, subscribe to the podcast, and don't forget to share with your girlfriend. Cheers.
All right, we're going to kick things off with our Life is Lifing segment as per usual. Brittne, what is going on in your world?
Okay, Lisha, so I've been in a little bit of a conundrum and it's been occupying a lot of mental space. I wanted to ask your opinion on this. Before this was a confession, now this is actually like, I want your advice. So I'm soliciting your advice. So I wear many hats as a hospitalist. One of them is working in this role where I identify patients who are in the emergency department who could potentially go home, but they just need some additional support. And so it's our hospital to home program. I was on a meeting and they asked me to apply for a medical director role. And that sounds fantastic. I think that there are many opportunities in which I can add value. I'm thinking that after I review the benefits, there's going to be a loss of income. There's going to be a loss of benefits. And I'm trying to figure out how I might be able to do both, but I don't know if it's going to be feasible because there's slightly a conflict of interest. This company, it will provide more flexibility because I'll be working from home. And as you know, with these kiddos, I need some flexibility. But I don't know. It's like, what do I value more, the flexibility or the benefits? And then when I looked at their match, is not as significant. And there's a vesting period. You have to remain with the company for 3 years in order to get 100%. So there's just like a couple of things that give me pause.
Okay, let me make sure I'm understanding this correctly. You have your current job at the hospital that you work for in Boston. And then you were presented with this new opportunity to be a medical director of what it seems like a different institution or organization, if I'm understanding that correctly.
Yes.
Okay. And so when you compare one job to the other, you have your current job, which you are in a position where you're teaching learners and finding joy in that. I remember for one of our other episodes, but you love it. So you have that, or you have this other opportunity where maybe you wouldn't be teaching learners, but it gives you more life flexibility because you can work from home. But as you are comparing sort of the salary or the compensation packages from your existing job and this new opportunity, it's like, okay, this new opportunity gives you more life flexibility, but it also has some financial repercussions commission.
Mhm.
And it's like you would get paid less, it seems like overall. It's unclear to me. I don't know if you mind sharing. Is you're getting paid less like in salary, or if the only difference is like from the benefits, from like a matching perspective and things like that? Like, what's the big difference?
It could be a difference in salary. I think salary can be negotiated. And so the salary might be comparable, but at my current employer, they give 10%. It's not even a match. They just give 10% of your retirement, right? Of your salary towards your retirement, right? And then they also give you a portion towards your HSA, your healthcare savings account funding that I'm using to invest more as far as like a CME and just some other benefits that I think are really valuable at the institution where I work.
Yeah. So I hear what you're saying. It seems like the main thing that's making this decision hard is the difference in compensation, whether that's from salary or from benefits. So let me ask you a different question. What job do you think you would enjoy doing more?
That's a fantastic question. I do feel that there are opportunities for me to be in this medical director role to really improve patient care, to improve operations, allow me to tap into my quality improvement expertise. It's not going to be bedside. And I pride myself on, 1 week, it was a tough week, but I had a complete heart block. I had a new diabetes insipidus, like the patient's sodium was like 170. We typically don't see 170s. And I'm like, oh, I solved these problems. I fixed those patients. So that gives me a lot of pride, so it wouldn't be as much clinical medicine.
Would it be any clinical medicine? Because, I mean, just from that like 20-second clip, right, I could hear the joy and the passion in your voice that you're like exuding as you talk about it. And so I'm wondering, would you be giving that up completely, or just you wouldn't be doing it as often?
It would almost be complete. There will be some clinical medicine, but in my role as hospital to home, it would be as me kind of working with the other doctors to help them think about how can we provide the same level of care at home for this patient and how can we discharge her. I would not be involved in like the nuances, decision by decision care of the patient. So I'm not necessarily needed in that role because there's an emergency medicine physician who will be caring for the patient and the patient will have a primary care physician. I'm just like this added consultant.
Okay, I'm taking my time with this because a decision that I might make based on my own values may be different from a decision that you might make based on your own values in your own life situation. I think part of the beauty of being as accomplished as you are and in the financial position that you are is you have a little bit more options and choices, right? You don't have to choose a job solely based on money.
Mhm.
Now, money's important. Obviously, we started a whole podcast, but it's not the only thing, right? And so I think one of the things that I would challenge you to do is to say, if money were not an issue, which job would I choose? And obviously, there are elements of one job that you'd like to have in the other and elements of the other job that you'd prefer to have in the one. But if you can't customize and create this ideal job mix of both, and I'm not saying that you can't, but I'm just saying if you had to choose and money were not an issue, both jobs paid you the same, which job do you think you would enjoy more?
That's a really good question. I don't know, to be honest with you, because I've never worked in that other role.
Okay.
I do feel that I would miss bedside medicine.
Okay. I'm sort of getting that inclination as well. And so I'm sort of leaning towards you keeping your current job because I'm on the side of like, I want you to be happy. Right. But I mean, I'm sure there are people listening to this who are probably like, well, Lisha, money is really important. And like, if there is a drastic difference in salary, then like that may sway people one way versus another. And some things that I always tell people to keep in mind is that it's not just apples to apples, right? You have to consider
Mhm.
your tax rate and the fact that even if there is a salary difference of 20,000 or 30,000, right? That is significantly different when you think about the post-tax difference.
Mhm.
The other thing I would challenge you to is that you're in a unique position in that your husband is also a physician, your husband also works, and you all are in a different financial situation and that you all are a bit more financially stable than maybe the average person. And so you have the ability to make a decision based on what you would enjoy more, whereas other people may not have that luxury at this stage in their life or in their career. And so I think you should take advantage of that, right? If you are privileged enough to be able to make a decision and choose what you enjoy more, it's like you might make more money in this other job, but how much more money do you actually need, right? And, most people wouldn't turn down extra money, but if that extra money requires you to not be as happy, not feel as fulfilled, then you have to ask yourself if that's worth it to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's Lisha's therapy session.
I thank you in advance. And I hope that the women listening, Lisha, I really appreciate just allowing me, giving me permission and saying it to prioritize joy. I think oftentimes in the decisions that we make, we consider all of the logical reasons and we put ourselves and our own needs last. But really, that is really important because if you're working a job that you don't enjoy, then it's not going to be sustainable. And if you quit, then you're not going to be able to bring in that income anyways, right? So the money really, it matters, but it doesn't matter. So thank you so much for allowing me to occupy some space on this podcast episode for that decision making, because it's been something that I've been considering for, a week now and trying to figure out the benefits and do kind of that opportunity analysis.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. So, as you are contemplating which job you're going to take, I'm like getting ready for a work retreat. So I'm trying to figure out if I actually like the people that I work with and like my job. So no offense to if any of my coworkers are listening to this. I do appreciate your hard work. But, I'm like, this is my first work retreat at this job. And so I'm like, man, is this going to be one of those ones where they say it's a work retreat, but actually it's like, I don't know. It's like one of those things that you got to go to. And it's like somebody who claims they're an expert in something who's like trying to teach me how to do my job better. Or is this like an actual fun retreat where we get to do some exciting activity? And so I'm really excited about this. And for those who aren't watching the video, because maybe we don't have our video up right now, we just got interrupted by Brittany's adorable daughter who is home from school today. And it's Brittany's telling her to be quiet. But hi, Brooke.
Okay, go say hi, Dr. Lisha Taylor. And she runs away. So sorry, Lisha. She's like, I tried to watch another video, but it's not working. So here we are. This is mom life trying to multitask here. So she might come back out again. But at least the work retreats, I get what you're saying. Like you enjoy your colleagues, but to go on a retreat and occupy your time, it takes you away from patient care and things that you are normally doing. And so it requires that kind of conceptualize that time and those interactions with your colleagues. So I get it. It's like you can like a person here, you can enjoy them here, but then to be stuck in a room or sometimes it's days doing something differently, you get to see a different side of people. And I hope that that affords you the opportunity to like actually meet and mingle in a different way. And it's more about establishing those connections instead of being boring. And, you're like, okay, when is the next break? You checking your watch every 5 seconds. All right. Well, it sounds like this Life is Lifing segment kind of included a little bit of a healthcare hustle here because we're talking a lot about work and our life is lifing. And that's how it is, as an adult. Things happen. So, Lisha, we got a wealthy wonders question. And when I read this, I was like, oh, Alicia is the perfect person to answer this. So I just want to say, Deandra, thank you for leaving us this question. I think many people go through this, and I personally didn't have this as part of my experience and my journey. I'm happy that Lisha is well equipped to answer this question for you. So I'm just putting that out there, audience. Alicia's going to be dropping all of the gems about health insurance plans. So, Alicia, this is what the question says. It says, loving the podcast so far. Thank you both for what you do. I will be between jobs and taking some time off for 2 months. Congratulations, Deandra. I wanted to know more specifics about coverage versus buying health insurance on the marketplace during this time and what factors should be considered when making this decision. Thank you. Well, thank you, Deandra, for leaving us this question. And Lisha, I'm going to pass the baton, give the floor to you to answer this for her.
So the reason why Brittany's giving me the baton is because when she finished her training, she just hopped on her husband's insurance and it wasn't an issue. But as someone who is not married, Deandra, I understand. And I want to say that I had the same question. I had the question when I finished fellowship because for me, when I was finishing residency, I knew I was going to start fellowship. So there was not this question about health insurance because I knew, hey, I have health insurance at my residency. I'm going to have health insurance at my fellowship that I'm about to start. So there wasn't this question. But when I finished fellowship, I, like you said, hey, I'm going to take some time off. And I was like so excited, planning my travel plans. And then I was like, oh crap, what about my health insurance? And I'm a relatively healthy person. I don't take any prescription medicines or anything, but I knew enough to know I should probably not go uninsured. And so that's my first thing is I don't think that anyone should go uninsured. I realized that a lot more people go uninsured than we realize, especially during time periods like this, where you maybe are in between jobs and people don't have health insurance. And so I wanted to say that I don't think you should go uninsured. However, there are some things that you can do that might be quite similar and more cost effective. So, one thing I want you to know is that whenever you leave your job, usually they have the option for COBRA insurance. And what is COBRA? COBRA basically allows you to maintain your current health insurance that you currently get from your employer for a certain length of time. Usually, you can take out COBRA and you can be on COBRA for, I think it's like up to 12 months to a year and a half. And so, let's say that you were working at one job and you said, oh, I'm going to go on sabbatical for a year. You could technically get COBRA and use that COBRA insurance for up to, I think, a year and a half. The downside of COBRA is that COBRA is expensive. So when you are working at your employer, when you're a resident, when you're a fellow, and your job is paying the majority of your health insurance, or for me, your job is paying all of the health insurance premium cost, it doesn't really seem like you're paying much for health insurance, if anything at all. But when you leave that job, even though you can still maintain the health insurance, your employer is no longer going to subsidize it because you don't work at the organization anymore. And so that means you're going to have to pay the full cost of that health insurance. And I don't know about you, but I was shocked when I figured out how much mine cost. Because when I was leaving UCLA as a fellow, and I was like, okay, I'm going to look into COBRA. I remember sending out emails and asking about COBRA insurance. And there were different costs for people in different situations. So if I was a single person, which I was, or unmarried person, then there was one cost. If I needed COBRA insurance for myself and a dependent, there was a different cost. If I needed COBRA insurance for myself, a spouse, and a dependent, there was a different cost. It was like family coverage versus head of household coverage versus single person coverage. And even for the single person coverage, I remember it being nearly $1,000 a month. And I was like, look, I'm going to be in between jobs. I'm traveling. I'm not working. I can't afford to pay $1,000 a month for COBRA insurance. And so I was like, okay, that's expensive. What is my next option? I remember asking a lot of my attendings. Some of them said that they just went uninsured. But what you can actually do is one of two things. These are one of the two things that I recommend. The first thing is you can actually not buy COBRA right now, but get COBRA later. So what happens is COBRA is retroactive and it's retroactive for up to 2 months. That means you could technically not pay for COBRA. If something happens, you get hit by a bus, you need to be hospitalized or whatever, you could then sign up for COBRA and it would be retroactive. So it would cover you for that accident. Does that make sense? So COBRA is retroactive for up to 60 days once you leave your employer. And so what a lot of people did is they said, you know what? I am technically not going to pay for COBRA right now because I know that if I end up needing health insurance, then I can activate the COBRA later, up to
Mm.
60 days after I leave my employer. And so this was really helpful for a lot of people who wanted to take exactly what you're taking, which is 2 months off, right? And so a lot of people said, you know what, I'm going to take a month off. I'm going to take 2 months off. If something happens to me and I end up needing the health insurance, I will buy COBRA at that time and retroactively activate it. And so that is one option for you. That was not the option that I could pursue for a couple of reasons. The main reason was I was taking more than 2 months off. So it's like, well, what do you do if you're someone like me and you're taking more than 2 months off? So one option is you could start paying for COBRA at the 60-day mark. But again, COBRA was expensive. And so for me, that wasn't very feasible. Another option is you can do what I did and you can buy health insurance on the health insurance marketplace. And I don't know about you, but I always assumed that like the health insurance marketplace, it reminded me of Obamacare. I guess that's what some people call it. And I always thought that was for like people who like didn't have really good jobs. I was very judgmental of people who got health insurance on the marketplace. And I was like, am I one of those people who needs health insurance? And I was. And I remember going to healthcare.gov and looking at the plans, and they were actually pretty affordable for me. They asked me, what's my income? And at that point, it was going to be zero. So they were relatively cheap. They had different levels of plans that I could purchase, like what kind of coverage did I need? And I knew that, hey, I'm going to start a new job. So I don't need the most comprehensive coverage. I just need something so that if something happens to me, I'm not going to go bankrupt in medical bills. And so I chose a pretty cheap plan. And I think I ended up paying maybe like $200 or $300 a month. I know some people who hopped on their spouse's insurance, i.e. Brittne over here. I know some
Yeah.
people who were young enough to still hop on their parents' insurance if they were under the age of 26. I don't think that's very applicable for a lot of us, but for some people, if you are really young, then you may be able to hop on your parents' insurance. But for me, I ended up buying health insurance on the federal marketplace. So my advice to you would be to look into buying health insurance on the federal marketplace, or you can retroactively activate COBRA if you need it within that 60 days. One thing to keep in mind, though, is when you are eligible for health insurance at your new employer, just because you are starting your new job in 60 days does not mean that you are eligible for health insurance in 60 days. I don't know about you, but at my job, you had to be working at that employer for at least 30 days. So
Mm.
check in to see when benefits kick in at your job because you still may need a health insurance plan. So it could be that you wait it out for 60 days because you know that if something happens, you can activate COBRA. And then at day 61, you just buy a very cheap health insurance plan on the federal marketplace for maybe a couple $100s to cover you until you are eligible for your job's new health insurance plan.
Okay, Lisha. So I like to say thank you for educating us, me included. One of the things that you mentioned was the time delay. So, right, it takes some time. You have coverage, COBRA retroactive coverage for 60 days. And
Mhm.
then you'll be starting your new employer and you don't know when that health insurance will be effective. How much time was, in your experience, did it take for you to enroll on the marketplace into a health insurance plan and be covered? Did it occur like that same day or did it take weeks for you to figure out which plan was appropriate for you? Like, how much time did this take?
Not much time at all. I think I was able to browse the plans and choose a plan within a day. And I just took my time because I wasn't sure which one I actually wanted. As you know, Brittany, there's lots of different health insurance plans, high deductible health insurance plans that would give me access to an HSA. So I was just thinking about what kind of plan I wanted. But technically speaking, it did not ask a ton of questions. There wasn't this huge convoluted application. It was very easy, actually, surprisingly easy. The most annoying thing to me was that I just got a lot of spam calls from people who wanted to sell me health insurance. And I still get those calls and texts now. I'm like, "Y'all, I'm employed now. I have a job." But yeah, so I was able to sign up for the marketplace for health insurance through the federal marketplace. I think I chose a plan that cost me maybe like $200 or $300 a month. Once I became eligible for my new job's health insurance plan, I canceled it. So I just called and canceled. And it was pretty easy, pretty seamless. So it wasn't a very convoluted process. It was much more affordable for me than buying Cobra. But I definitely did wait it for those 60 days because I knew I could activate Cobra if I needed to. And then I just started paying for the federal marketplace plan on day 61.
Awesome. Well, now you know, Deandra. So thank you for that question. And if you have a question, something you've been thinking about, whether it's student loans, investing, retirement, career planning, whatever the case may be, make sure you click the link in the show notes to ask a question. We love these questions and we just don't get enough of them, but we're here for you. We want to give you the information that you need and speak on topics that really interest you. So feel free to click the link in the show notes and ask us a question.
As physicians, one of the most important things that we can do is make sure that we secure our income because a lot of our financial plans are contingent on our high doctor income. One of the things that you will need to do is make sure that you get long-term disability insurance.
Now, Pradeep and his team at PKA Insurance Group have a reputation for putting people over profits and always doing what's best. Do not hesitate to email PKA Insurance and his team today.
They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.
Lisha, do you remember that day when you've paid the last penny on your credit card debt and car loan?
Yeah, it just felt so heavy and so constricting. And when I finally did pay it off, it was like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders because I knew that next month I was going to have so much extra cash flow.
You know, that same narrative is something that is echoed by a lot of the clients I have helped to pay off their debt. And I recall receiving that letter in the mail from SoFi. It said, "Congratulations, your loan is paid in full."
If you can identify with our story, we've got a product or a solution for you.
We've created the Debt Payoff Bootcamp, which includes the joyfully free accelerator that helps you get control over that consumer debt, those car loans, without sacrificing joy, and it includes student loans made simple.
Yep, that's right. Student loans can be complicated, but don't worry, I've got you covered. In this Student Loans Made Simple series, we give you the high yield information that you need to create the plan that's right for you.
We have the tools, the strategies included in this debt payoff course that's going to get you to financial freedom.
Head over to wealthmindedmd.com and click the link to our Debt Payoff Bootcamp to start your transformation today.
Well, Lisha, I that this actually dovetails very well with some things that people are experiencing now, which is this transition of jobs. And if we had to think about kind of like the to-do list or some of the high priority tasks that we should complete as we're considering a job transition or transitioning to a new state for a new career, for a new job, what would you say would be next? So one thing is definitely make sure you have appropriate health insurance coverage, but where should we go from there?
Yeah, so I had this sort of end of the year, end of the academic year, end of training, if you will, checklist. And I went through this checklist just to make sure that I dotted my I's and crossed my T's. And the next thing on this checklist was printing out really important forms. And that included my malpractice insurance coverage. Because when I was in training, they covered my malpractice, right? So if I got sued or something like that, then they would cover it because I was a trainee at the time. What I realized though is that when I was getting ready to start my attending job, my attending jobs wanted a copy of my training jobs malpractice insurance. They wanted to know, hey, 5 years down the line, if somebody said that they saw you when you worked at Emory or when you worked at UCLA, we want to make sure that you have tail insurance. We want to make sure that you have malpractice insurance coverage. And so they asked me for a copy of it. And so I knew that I needed, hey, one of the things that's on my to-do list is to print out important forms. And one of these really important forms is a copy of the malpractice insurance coverage policy at my residency institution and at my fellowship. And so I actually had to email the GME office at Emory and at UCLA and say, hey, my name's Dr. Taylor, used to work here as a resident or as a fellow. Do you mind sending me a copy of the malpractice insurance coverage at our institution? And so I remember them emailing me that and me, forwarding it to my co-residents and co-fellows who were like, oh, that's a good idea. Can you send me that? And so I forwarded it to them. And then I saved it. So I have a folder on my computer where I save these documents because you will be surprised when you are trying to get attending jobs, they want to know that wherever you were at previously, you had malpractice insurance coverage. And when it comes to malpractice insurance coverage, there are two main types. There's a claims made policy and an occurrence policy. So an occurrence policy is more comprehensive. It covers you for anything that occurred while you worked there, even if you leave the job later. A claims made policy is not as comprehensive. It only covers you for claims that are made during the time that you work for the organization, but it does not cover you for claims that are made once you leave. And so if you have a claims made policy wherever you work, you need tail insurance. You need something that's going to cover your tail once you leave. And so if you're working somewhere and you know you're about to leave, you need to email HR, your human resources department, or email the GME department and say, hey, can I have a copy of the malpractice insurance coverage? And if it's an occurrence policy, that's great. If it's a claims made policy, you need to say, okay, do you have a copy of the tail insurance coverage policy? Because you're going to need a copy of those documents wherever you're working next. Even if your new job didn't ask for it yet, you may leave your upcoming job and get a different job later who may still want a copy of that documentation. So print out important forms, mainly your malpractice insurance coverage.
Well, I love that you are so proactive, Lisha. You got your documents. I hope they're organized on your desktop. Because for me, when I transition jobs, I was like, and I just email the human resource person at Emory when I transitioned here to Boston, et cetera. So, I think that this is definitely very important. And oftentimes, this is something that, our eyes kind of gloss over, especially depending on where you work and how you work. So I work as a hospitalist. Like, yeah, I got appropriate coverage. You actually don't really know, right? And so you want to make sure that you do have the appropriate coverage, especially if you're someone who's working in very like high risk situations. Like I think obstetrics and gynecology is one of the highest practices where like claims might be submitted later. And so that tail insurance is going to be very, very important. And for me, it's just thinking about, I actually need to go back and review what my malpractice insurance. So maybe you're not transitioning and you've just been working at a place way too long that you've forgotten most of the things besides of your benefits. Hello, you're in good company. And it might be wise for you to just go back and take a moment to review. The next thing that you would also need to review, and we're going to have a whole episode about this, is your disability insurance. And recently, most of the like financial to-do list tasks I complete in this household. And I recall that my husband got a letter from Principal Insurance saying, hey, it's time to update your income. And you might think, well, why is that really important that you update your income when you're thinking about your disability insurance? Your disability insurance basically covers you in the case of a disability, in the case of an emergency, in a case of that something happens and you're not able to perform your work duties. And when we talk about disability insurance, they kind of fall into two camps, your short-term disability insurance and your long-term disability insurance. In this case, I'm thinking about more long-term disability insurance. And when my husband transitioned from residency, we got a policy, but now he makes a lot more, as well as me. I make a lot more than I did at the time of residency. So you want to make sure that you keep this updated and current. So I just kind of gave you kind of what's going on in my life. But Lisha, take us back to disability insurance. What are some of the important factors? I know because most hospitals or employers offer a disability insurance. Is that adequate for someone who's transitioning jobs, especially someone who is a physician?
Yeah, so I always say it's very important that you have your own individual, own occupation, specialty specific, if you will, disability insurance policy. And the reason why this is important is because even though most of us get some form of long-term disability insurance coverage through our jobs, that is oftentimes not enough. So the amount that they will pay you if you actually do get disabled is much lower than you might need to live on because it's not necessarily based on your current salary. Usually there's a cap or a limit in place. And secondly, their definition of disabled might be different from yours, right? You might think you're disabled because you have arthritis in your hands and you can't operate as efficiently. They may say, well, your brain still works, so you can see patients on telemedicine, right? And so you want to make sure that you have your own individual long-term disability insurance policy that is specific to your specialty. So the amount that you get at your job may not be sufficient, which means you need your own policy. And when it comes to getting your own policy, you want to make sure that you go to an independent insurance agent broker. And that's actually, one of the sponsors of our podcast show, PKA Insurance Group. So Pradeep Otto and his team there are independent insurance agents. And the word independent is really important. It means that they can get you quotes from multiple different places and companies, right? Sometimes I see this happen all the time where there's like some finance person from these different financial companies or insurance companies that will volunteer to speak for free for the residents, right? And they'll be like, you need disability insurance coverage, just hit me up, right? But they're only offering you the policy for the company that they work with. For an independent insurance agent, they're getting you quotes from a lot of different companies. And so then you can compare and contrast which policy may be best for you. And that's really important. The other thing is that if you are somebody who has medical conditions, let's say you take prescription medications, you've been diagnosed with a chronic illness, you have a mental health disorder, you take medicines for anything, then it may be hard for you to qualify for your own individual long-term disability insurance coverage policy. And so in that case, you really want to look into what's called a GSI policy at your institution. So if you're someone who's finishing residency or finishing fellowship or some sort of training, please, please, please look into what's called a GSI, guaranteed standard issue policy at your organization. A guaranteed standard issue policy is exactly that. It guarantees you the ability to purchase long-term disability insurance without medical underwriting, which means they're not going to examine all your medical conditions. They're not going to ask you what prescription medicines you're on. You are guaranteed to qualify for that insurance policy. And that is really, really helpful. When I was in medical school, one of my best friends got diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And although, they took out her thyroid, she's totally fine. She's amazing. One of the smartest people I've ever met. She could not get disability insurance. Like I remember her talking to an agent who said, hey, you shouldn't apply for this because people are going to deny you because you literally just had cancer last year. And it's been a few years now, but I remember her calling me up and saying, Lisha, what do I do about disability insurance? I'm worried I'm never going to be able to get it. And I said, you know what? Why don't you get a GSI policy, this guaranteed standard issue policy before you leave your residency? It's going to guarantee you coverage because they're not going to ask if you've ever had cancer. There's no medical underwriting. And she did, and she was able to get disability insurance coverage that way. And to this day, she's like so grateful and so thankful because she wouldn't have been able to get it any other way. And again, I am very passionate about this because I feel like disability insurance coverage is so important. You don't know what's going to happen in your life. You don't know if something's going to happen that's going to prevent you from being able to work. And disability insurance coverage guarantees your income. So if you can't work for some reason, you're still going to get those high doctor paychecks coming in. And what Brittne is talking about is when you are transitioning, especially from resident to attending, from fellow to attending, or maybe you've been in attending for a few years and you have never changed your policy, you need to upgrade your policy because you probably make more money now than you did before. And so your disability insurance company needs to know how much you make now so they can increase the amount of your benefit. Right? You don't want to get it as a resident, never update the policy, something happens, and then they're like, okay, we're going to pay you 60 grand a year. You're like, look, I need a lot more than that to live on. So you want to make sure that you increase your policy so that they can pay you more should you actually need to use the benefit.
Very good. Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with all of that. And I've heard horror stories about individuals who think that they have the appropriate coverage and that it's an own occupation policy. But you really want to look into that definition. And we're going to have a whole episode about this in the future because basically you want to say that if you cannot do whatever it is that you're doing right now, neurosurgery, if you're a dentist, dentistry, whatever it is that you're doing right now, you want to make sure that that is written very clearly because even if you can do something else, you could do telemedicine or you can teach, you can get your disability benefit on top of whatever money you're making in the other job. And so this is what we really just implore. This is so, so important and you want to make sure that you do it right. So stay tuned, subscribe for future episodes. All right, Lisha. Now, when I graduated from medical school, I had a lot of student loan debt and I know you have have student loans as well. And you don't got to tell my business. They already know. They don't need to be reminded. All right. So, yes, we're at different points in our lives, but at any point, I know that some people still have student loans and they've graduated from residency decades ago. And this is something when I speak with women about their student loans, they're like, oh, that's President Biden's problem. So, and I know some people take that 6-month deferment and they don't really have a plan. What would you recommend, not diving into like the nitty gritty details, but what is like the first step that you would recommend to anyone who is transitioning and have not considered at all their student loans?
Yeah. So if that's you, you're not alone. This was all my friends. They all just called me. That's what they did. I just got these random calls when we all finished training. Lisha, what should I do? And I was like, okay, y'all, come on now. Y'all know better than this. And they were like, Lisha, look, I don't know what's going on with student loans. I thought Biden was going to forgive them. Seems like I still have them. They keep emailing me. I keep ignoring it. What can I do? And I was like, okay, let's come up with a plan. And they're like, Lisha, look, I don't really care what the plan is as long as they don't have me paying anything. Okay, guys, come on, come on. This is what I told them. I was like, if we had to do one thing today, let's make sure that we are enrolled in an income driven repayment plan. Because for a lot of folks, myself included, your payment is based on your income, but it's based on the income that you reported on the most recent tax filing when you've updated your income. And so, even though you may make more now, and let's say you filed taxes and your higher income is reflected on your tax statements, the student loan department does not talk to the IRS, right? And so, you don't actually have to update your income with the student loan department, with the Department of Education until they tell you you have to. And so, what I always tell people is, hey, if they haven't told you you need to update your income, you can probably just stay put paying $0 a month or paying a low monthly amount. So you need to go into your student loan service or figure out who that is. For a lot of people who have federal student loans, they are managed by companies called loan servicers. Examples of loan servicers are Mohila, Nelnet, Great Lakes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So figure out who your loan servicer is. They've probably been the one that's been calling you and emailing you. So just take a look through your emails, figure out who your loan servicer is, log into their portal and see when they're making you update your income. See when you have to recertify your income. If it's not right now, then you're good to go. But if you need to update your income soon, then when you update your income, you want to make sure that you switch into the most appropriate plan for you. For a lot of people, that's going to be the new Biden Save plan. For some other folks that are going from, an income of maybe $70,000 to an income of like over $400,000 or more, they may benefit from the pay as you earn plan. And so there's two main plans that a lot of people would benefit from, Save and Pay as you earn. I won't get into the nitty gritty details of each one of those, but I would say if I had to come up with one thing that you should do as you're transitioning, whether you're starting a new job or continuing and progressing at your current job, is just make sure that you're in the most appropriate income driven repayment plan for you if you have federal student loans. And then, if you work for an academic institution, if you work for a nonprofit health system, you may be eligible for the public service loan forgiveness program. So I would say look into that and enroll in that as well.
All right. Love that. And the one thing that I just want to add as a caveat or a clarification is that depending on when you're listening to this episode, that there is a phase out of the pay as you earn plan starting in July of this year of 2024. So that may not be an option for you moving forward. But I think the overall arching theme is to know that you have to do something with your student loans and how you manipulate your student loans, how you enroll in various payments. That is going to really be dictated on many different factors, but you can't create a strategy if you don't know anything about your student loans. And if you're someone who has student loans or consumer debt, then we have a whole debt payoff boot camp where we teach you the nitty gritty of how to make those decisions so that you have the knowledge and the expertise to keep making those decisions as your life changes. So click into the show notes or head over to our website to learn more about that boot camp. All right, Lisha, I just want to talk about one other thing that y'all know I'm buying a house and moving costs is like, do I want to pay for a trip? Do I want to hire people? And I know whenever you're transitioning careers, especially if you are moving to a new location, moving costs can be quite expensive and it can be a huge headache. So, Lisha, for you, when you moved from California to Atlanta, how did you navigate that transition? How did you research some of these vendors and what specifically were you looking for?
Yeah, so I was looking to pay the least amount. So it was interesting. So I moved across country a couple times. 0 out of 5 stars. Don't recommend. But each time I had to figure out, am I moving my stuff in my apartment or am I going to sell it, leave it at one of my family's houses? Like, what am I going to do with my stuff? Both times when I moved to California and from California, I just left the big pieces of furniture at like my parents' house or my brother's house or whatever. So I wasn't moving big furniture because that was really expensive. And I just thought my current furniture that I've had throughout med school and residency is not worth what the shipping company is trying to cost me to ship it. And so I didn't ship furniture. In terms of clothes, I remember when I was going to California, I shipped a bunch of clothes in boxes and things. When I was coming from California, I just did checked bags whenever I would fly back and forth from California to Atlanta. But one of the things that I wanted to make sure that people knew is to look into preferred vendors. So when I was going from Atlanta to California and I was starting fellowship, UCLA, and I don't think this is unique to UCLA, I think a lot of other residency programs or fellowship programs had this as well, is that they had preferred vendors. And they said, hey, if you use a vendor that we prefer, we will pay the upfront cost of moving. And this happened when I shipped my car because obviously I needed a car where I was living in California. And so I was like, how am I going to get my car there? I was not going to drive across the country. That was not in the cards for me. And so I knew I needed to ship my car from one side of the country to the other side of the country. And paying to ship your car, at least when I was doing it, was around $2,000 to $3,000. When I was going to California, I was a resident at the time. So I was like, look, I am barely making it as is. I definitely don't have $3,000 to spend on this and then hope to get reimbursed a few months later. And so one of the things that I did, UCLA had a list of preferred vendors. And I was like, wait, what? They're going to pay up front? Oh, I'm using them. So I called the list of preferred vendors and got quotes and just chose one of those companies. And so I would say to look and to see if where you are starting, so where your next job is, see if they have a list of preferred vendors that will pay up front. The other thing I would recommend is that you get quotes and look at reviews. I have heard horror stories of shipping companies that people have used that they've, had an estimate of one cost. And then they said, oh, they increased the cost later and they wouldn't deliver people's stuff until they paid these
Mm.
astronomical costs. It was almost like this whole moving scam. And so if I were you, I would look into people in your residency program who have moved or in your fellowship program where you're going to or in your new attending job. And I would ask them about who they used and what their experience was so that you don't have this issue with getting scammed or the price gouging happening. The other thing I would recommend is that you ask where you are currently working if they give you money for moving. I did this when I started fellowship at UCLA, and I was surprised to find that they would cover the costs of like up to $3,000, I think, of moving expenses, which was amazing. When I started my new attending job, they were like, yeah, we'll cover moving costs, up to, I think it was like $10,000 or $20,000. And again, this wasn't information that was like freely given to me in an email. It was information that I had to ask about. And so if I were you and you're moving or if you're starting a new job at a new location, I would ask if they're going to pay for any moving costs and also see if they're willing to upfront some of the moving costs because it can be quite expensive if you don't ask about it.
Yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly recommend that you ask about and negotiate maybe. If you're signing a new contract, then negotiate that that's part of your incentives. And before you go into that negotiation, have an estimate from multiple moving companies about how much it's actually going to cost so you can be empowered during that negotiation. Honestly, every time we've moved, we've either done it ourselves and rented a U-Haul or hired movers. One of the benefits of hiring movers, depending on where you're transitioning, how much money you have, is for them to do it all. And of course, you want to choose a reputable company. But if they break anything, then you can submit a claim and get reimbursed for that expense. So, when we moved from Atlanta to Boston, say they were to break our, I don't know, our love seat or something like that, then we could expense that back to the company and be reimbursed for that. I have one more thing to tell people is make sure that you print out other important documents. So I mentioned before the malpractice insurance policy. Another thing to print out is your procedure log if you're in a procedural specialty. Oftentimes, where you are working, they will ask what kind of procedures you've done, how many you've done. And so be sure to print out any procedure logs that you may have. The other thing is be sure to forward your email. Usually, especially when you're leaving training, you will lose access to your residency or your fellowship training email address. And so be sure to forward that so you still get those emails. And then when I was leaving, I also made a document of all of my attendings emails along with the emails of other people that I interacted with because I still wanted to know what their email was and still be able to contact them. Because once you lose access to your email, I don't know about you, but I didn't memorize everyone's email address and I still wanted to be able to contact them. And some people's email address was not freely available on the website. And so if I were you, I would make a list of all of the people that you still want to stay in contact with, like everyone in your department's emails, your co-fellows, your residents, all that kind of stuff. If you are in attending, make a document with all of your attending emails
and just make sure that you save that. So if you want to contact them later, you know, and so have an ability to do that. So be sure to do that.
Lisha, I just texted a friend like, hey, what's this person's email or Instagram, Facebook? I got a hold of people. So let's talk about some fun money. So I mentioned at the start of this episode that I went to this conference in San Diego, and it was so fulfilling for my soul. We've talked a lot about work. I'm sorry for our listeners, but being there, this was a hospital medicine conference. And so I got to see my colleagues from Emory. I spent 2 years working at Emory. And I always tell people that I love my job at Boston. It's very supportive, but they feel more like colleagues opposed to my colleagues at Emory. They felt more like family. So I got to see one of my colleagues who actually gave us the mattress. Y'all know I'm frugal. So gave us the mattress that Brooke is still sleeping on.
Wait, hold on. First of all your colleagues in Boston now hate you. Second of all, your friends. I need to up my friend game because I know in an earlier episode we talked about how your friend gave you all these designer clothes, and now you are talking about how your friends apparently buy mattresses for your kids, and a mattress is not cheap. So I'm just like, what? I need to have a discussion with my friends.
Or my friends just look at me like, oh, poor Brittne. I know she needs some help. Let me give her this stuff.
That's not it at all. Mr. Dual income position household. No, that's not it at all.
It was just very refreshing for my soul to see, old colleagues who they're just pieces of my heart. That connection, that thread is still there. And I spent some money on going out to eat and just reconnecting with them. So that was really, really restorative for me. What about you? What are you doing fun with money?
So I am buying clothes, but not for myself, for my friends. I am at that stage in life where a lot of my friends are getting married and having babies. And so that means I'm spending a lot on weddings and baby showers and that sort of thing. But it also means I get to tap into like my auntie mode. And one of the ways that I have been doing that is by buying baby clothes for my friends. And so one of the things that I love to do is to get customized gifts. And so I will usually ask my friends, what gender they have and if they know the gender, and then ask them what their new kid's name is. And I will usually like buy some sort of clothes, like with a onesie with their name on it, or like jackets with their name on it, or blankets with their names on. I just think it's so cute. And so I have been basically like living vicariously through them and tapping into auntie mode by buying a bunch of baby clothes for my friends.
And they're so cute. They're so small. And yeah, I think you can go crazy buying baby clothes. You might want to set yourself a budget because those small little baby clothes, they add up, but they are so, so adorable. So I'm happy that you have that experience. There are times in my life where I see a really cute baby or even like a cute pregnant lady. And I'm like, do I want another one? And then I'm reminded that I don't.
I need to have a little talk with Kevin and be like, Kevin, so this is what Brittany reveals on the podcast.
No,
She was thinking of baby number 3. His head's gonna spin.
I think he would be fine with it. He loves when I am pregnant because like I'm pretty thin and I have trouble gaining weight. It's the opposite problem that some people have. And so it like just naturally puts on a little bit of cushion. And so
Kevin, he's like, hey, I like the curves. Lisha, you're doing a good job. Keep convincing her. All right. Our entire audience knows way too much about your personal life
Yes.
and your husband's taste. So we will keep you posted on whether or not they try for baby number 3. I'm going to close out this episode before Kevin kills me. Okay.
Well, we want to say thank you for listening to this episode, and we hope that you learned something. Thank you to the listener who left us the Wealthy Wonder, and feel free to check out the Debt Payoff course and leave us a review. Ask us a question. We are here to answer your questions. We love to hear from you. Goodbye. Hello, and thank you for listening to our podcast. And because of that, we have something for you, our Wealthy Mind Starter Kit.
Have you ever thought to yourself, I wish I could be better with money? Do you want to start investing and saving for retirement, but keep delaying because you don't know where to start? Our Wealthy Mind Starter Kit is here to help.
This guide will teach you what you didn't learn in your training so you can stop being confused about money and start taking what we call wealthy-minded action.
We'll help you become a master of your finances and simplify investing so you can get started today. Take control of your financial future by downloading your free copy of the Wealthy Mind Starter Kit now and start building the wealth you deserve.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittne Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisha Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.
One of the most important things you can do is ensure you have long-term disability insurance. Long-term disability insurance secures your income if the unexpected happens and you are unable to work due to medical illness, chronic conditions, or an accident.
Unfortunately, all insurance agents aren't created equal. Some of them are so focused on making a sale that they fail to reveal certain necessary information, tell you about discounts available, or clearly explain the process. Pradeep Bhado and his team at PKA Insurance Group are different. They have a reputation of putting people over profits and always doing what's best.
If you need life insurance or disability insurance, reach out to Pradeep and his team today. They will help you get the insurance you need with the service you deserve.